All right, so no slide deck for this recording here. Instead, it's just a demonstration for how to use a citation manager. My preference is Zotero, as well as the web-based program Covidence, which is going to help expedite your process of completing your systematic review. So first, I just want to give an overarching picture as to what the purpose of the systematic review is, as well as what that process will look like. And that big picture is depicted here through the Prisma flow diagram, which is the standard way in which we report how we take a large pool of studies and then visually depict how we narrow that large pool of studies down to a smaller pool. So in this review that I did with some of my colleagues a few years ago, we sat down, we nailed down our databases that we were going to search, as well as our search terms. We had a good, clear idea as to what we're going to apply as inclusion, exclusion criteria. And upon casting our initial search, we wound up with a little over 1,100 studies to address our question. We entered those studies into the Covidence program, and Covidence was kind enough to go ahead and kick out 78 duplicates that it detected, and it tracks all of this for you, so you don't need to manually track duplicates that are removed by the Covidence program. And so after those duplicates were removed, we ended up screening a little over 1,000 studies. And screening in systematic reviews is typically a two-phase process. The first part of screening is where you are reading the titles and the abstracts of studies, and you're deciding based on that synopsis of information if a study should progress to the next phase of screening, or if it should totally get kicked out because it's not relevant to your PICO question. And you can get rid of a decent number of studies during this title and abstract screening phase. So in this title abstract screening phase for us, of the little over 1,000 studies that we screened, we kicked out 990. They just didn't fit our overarching research question. And so based on that title abstract screening process, we then ultimately pushed 48 studies into the next phase of screening, known as the full text screening phase. And that's where you're reading, in this case, 46 articles in their entirety to determine if a study should in fact be included in your final review. And you read the full text because you want to confidently be able to make that decision that yes, the study meets our inclusion criteria, it's relevant to our PICO question, we're going to keep it in our review because it's going to help us answer our question. During this phase of full text screening, we got, as an example, we got rid of 33 studies for these different reasons. And so in the Covidence program, I'll show you, Covidence does ask you to make a determination as to why a study in this full text phase should not move into the final review stage. And so you have to select, based on your exclusion criteria that you set, why a study should not be included and instead be excluded and kicked out of your review. So in total, after screening all of those full text articles, we ended up with 13 studies that we included in our final review. So that's the overarching picture. And now you might be asking yourself, well, still, what does that mean for me and how I should approach this final group project? And that's what this the subsequent portions of this lecture will be about. So I'm going to minimize this, and instead I'm going to pull up Zotero. So again, this is merely my preference. You can use whatever citation manager you would like, but citation managers are helpful in reviews for a couple of reasons. It serves as a single central location where you can store all of the studies that you are putting into your review. And it also, as the name would imply, helps expedite the process of citing or referencing articles in the actual paper document that you'll be typing up. So as an example here, just to show you the utility of Zotero, in this one folder that I have, if I click on this one, this right side panel tells me, of course, the title and some author information, as well as the full abstract, tells me in which journal this was published, the year, and yada yada. What's also nice, though, is that we can create our own citation directly from Zotero. So if I pull up a blank document and I'm pretending to put together my reference list, it will, in whatever format I choose, APA, AMA, Vancouver, it will go ahead and just take care of that citation for me. Might have to clean up certain parts of it. It's not necessarily perfect science, but it's at least better than you manually having to put together those citations on your own. And this, you saw me do this manually for one single citation. Zotero is capable of putting together an entire bulk dump, so to speak, of citations in your entire document. That's outside the scope of this lecture, but if you are interested in how to do that, I'm happy to show you, because it really is a huge time saver. All right, so we're going to come back to Zotero, but before we do that, I'm just going to go ahead and make a folder that is specific to this demonstration. We're going to call it EBP2 demo, and that's going to pop up right there at the top. We're going to leave that highlighted, and we're going to minimize out of there. All right, so let's go ahead and cast our initial search here as a demonstration for how you would go about searching a database using terms that are relevant to your PICO question. So last semester in EBP1, we talked about CINAHL. We're going to start with CINAHL here. CINAHL is going to give us a good collection of peer-reviewed journals that are relevant to the nursing literature, but we're going to expand our databases to also include a lesser-known database, AgeLine, which is specific to geriatric and gerontology research. And then we're also going to include, to capture some of the health sciences research, we're also going to use Medline. I'd also say that if you're, as you are doing your review, to in order to capture the biomedical research, to also conduct searches in PubMed as well. All right, so we got our databases, and now I'm interested in fall prevention interventions. I'm interested in the older adult population. And we're going to narrow this further just by, we're going to throw some parentheses around here. And I'm not interested in clinical or community-based interventions. I'm interested in home-based interventions. So we're going to search. And this is going to yield 127 studies. For the sake of demonstration, we are just going to narrow this down to the past 5 years down here. We're going to update our search. And instead of 127, we've narrowed it down to 48 studies. All right, so in my past life, so to speak, if I was doing some sort of literature review for my own benefit or for a project or for an assignment back when I was in school, I would just kind of scan these different studies and make that decision. Well, this one looks like it's relevant. I'm going to keep this one, number 1, and I'm going to put that in my review. Number 2, I don't really care about. Number 3, I don't really care about. Number 4 looks good. That is a fine way of doing an unsystematic review of the literature. Because you're doing a systematic review of the literature, we need to take all 48 of these studies and end up screening them to determine if they should be included in our final review. So what we're going to do here, and bear with me because every time I do this demonstration, something always throws me off. There's an update I didn't plan for. There's a step that I overshot or didn't think about. So bear with me. This is real life though. Real life demonstration. So we're going to take our 48 studies and then we're going to put them into our results folder. Our results folder pops up over here. I'm going to go to folder view. And now from this kind of EBSCOhost interface, I'm going to select all my studies and I want to take these studies and I want to put them in Zotero. What I demonstrated for you earlier on Zotero, I'll pull it up real quick again. This is the desktop version of Zotero, which if I didn't mention already, I feel like it communicates a little bit better with Covidence, which we'll talk about next. There's also the web-based version. If you find the web-based version is easier, feel free to use that and let me know, because I love learning about the updates. It's hard to stay on top of all the updates sometimes. So, but I tend to find that the desktop version of Zotero is a little bit more conducive when working with Covidence. All right, so now we need to export all these, take these out of this EBSCOhost platform, and instead I want to own these in my own Zotero folder. So I've got this default radio button selected here, direct export in RIS format. That RIS format is super important regardless of what database you are searching. Covidence likes RIS files, so we're going to stick with RIS files here. We are going to save all of those 48 studies. Here, when you do download something like Zotero, oftentimes there's an option to link Zotero with your web browser, in which case it automatically will pull studies into Zotero. So we're going to hit OK. We're going to see that these studies are getting dropped into my EBP2 folder. Hopefully. There they go. All of those are getting uploaded. And if for some reason you're finding that you don't have that option of linking your web browser to your citation manager, you can always just download and export an RIS file, and even just save it to your desktop. That is fine. We really just want that RIS file. That is the most important piece in order to get studies into the Covidence web-based program. So let's see how we're doing. All right, we've got our studies here. Now I need to export this file, my EBP2 file, all those 48 studies. I need to export that in an RIS file right there. Hit OK, right? We've got our title, EBP2, RIS. We're just going to leave it in the downloads file. That's fine. We're going to save it. Great. All right, we're going to say, see you later, Zotero. Thanks for playing. Now we're going to pull up Covidence. So you can either Google Ohio State Covidence Health Sciences Library. In the previous lecture, I shared with you that link. Either way, make sure you're logging into Covidence, or at least setting up an account through Ohio State subscription, because it gets you free access to unlimited reviews. So your welcome page should look something like this. Request invitation to OSU's Covidence account. Your name goes in here, your email address, and then you will request an invitation. You'll then go to your email in order to actually make your account active. I already have a Covidence account, so I'm just going to sign in directly. And we're going to start a new review for your group. So you guys will be in groups of either 6 or 8 or so different of your class, different groups, group mates, students that have similar interests to you. So you're all going to be addressing the same PICO question in those groups of 6 to 8. But again, our goal as instructors is to put you in groups with individuals that have shared interests. So we're going to start a new review. We're going to give this the very creative name of EBP2 demo. You will want to, and this is important, you will want to make sure that you select this option, the Ohio State University subscription, if you're given the option of the two, just because we want you to have unlimited reviews. So make sure that that option is selected. You're going to create your review. You're not creating a Cochrane review. Always click no on that one unless you are doing a Cochrane review, and you will know if you are. We're going to create our review. In this reviewer page, and again, we just need one Covidence review per group. So designate somebody as being the Covidence leader that's going to go ahead and start this review for you, but everybody will need a Covidence account, because your Covidence leader will then be able to invite you and the rest of your group mates to be part of this review. And those invitations come right through here. Pretty straightforward and simple. All right, we'll talk about team settings, exclusion criteria, inclusion criteria in a moment, but I'm going to go back to our review, which looks like this. Whole lot of nothing, lots of zeros, lots of goose eggs, and that's because we haven't imported anything into Covidence. We don't know what we should start screening, what studies we should start screening in the title and abstract screening phase. So we are going to go ahead and import our 48 studies into the screening phase. We're going to choose a file, and you can import multiple RIS files. I want to make sure that you guys know that. You can continue to import different RIS files as you come across different groups of studies, perhaps that you identify in different database searches. So our RIS file was stored in our downloads. We are going to open that on up. We're going to import it. And based on the size of the file, we're uploading, at least right now, 48 references, which is good. We know that's consistent with what we found in our search. Based on the size of the number of studies that you're trying to import, of course, it might take a little bit longer for Covidence to upload the file, or import the file, I should say. But here, that didn't take too long. Of our 48 original studies, we are going to start title and abstract screening of 45 of those, because Covidence was able to remove 3 total duplicates for us. So that's nice of Covidence. Thank you very much. Before we start screening, I want to make sure that we're good to go with our different settings. So, settings. It is kind of nice, I think, to keep everybody on track. And if you have, your Covidence leader, so to speak, enter in here your search strategy. I'll pull up something from our previous lecture. So if I want to keep track of all the searches that I've conducted in different databases, I might say, hey, on the 5th of February, I plugged in these different search terms, yielded 48 studies, and I would also probably want to put in the databases and make note of the databases that I searched. And you would just maybe keep tally, not required, but certainly helpful to keep tally of the different searches that you ran, so you know what combination of search terms has been used and what combination of search terms has yielded a certain number of studies. Your review citation, that's not necessarily needed for this work right now. What is needed though is this is the default, which is good. We want to make sure that you're requiring at least 2 individuals to screen your titles and abstracts, as well as 2 individuals to screen your full text. This is a way that if you set it to 1, that just means that only 1 person is needed to ensure that a study should be included in the next phase of the review. If you have 2 people, then you've got 2 brains that are making that decision together. And if one person says yes and one person says no, then that means that you have to sit down and Covidence will say, hey, we need a firm decision on whether or not the study should move to the next phase of this review. If you both agree that the study is relevant to your PICO question, then Covidence will move it on to the next phase. But it is nice to make sure that you have somebody kind of checking your work to make sure that the inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria are applied consistently. Same thing, so for full text review, same thing to reviewers. Reviewers required for data extraction. We are not going to use Covidence for data extraction. That's where you're reading your final pool of studies, reading through them, and pulling out pieces of information that are important, such as the author, the year, the location in which the study was performed, study design, main intervention, main outcomes, those types of kind of hallmark characteristics that you want to make sure that you pull out from studies so you have a good synopsis of what each study in your review is talking about. Reviewers, say yes. Reviewers we already talked about. That's where your Covidence lead goes and invites you and your group mates to be part of your Covidence review. Team settings, that's just nice to be able to track who's done what, and so you're able to see how much progress each individual group member of yours has made towards screening titles and abstracts as well as full texts. And then this part is important here, so criteria and exclusion reasons. As you and your group mates nail down your inclusion and exclusion criteria, you will want to enter those different criteria into these boxes. Because once you get to that full text screening phase and you're making that decision to keep studies in or kick studies out, if you kick a study out, Covidence is going to ask you why. What is the reason that you are excluding this study? And you will have a drop-down option that will be created. Covidence will auto-create that drop-down list based on these different exclusion criteria that you list here. So make sure that you save that. You have some default options, but you can always add your own options in here if these don't apply. So you'll save those options. You do the same thing for full text review and make sure you save your options there as well. All right, so we're going to go back to our study and we're just going to jump right in. So title abstract screening. To be honest, at this point, the hardest setup work you've already completed, right? You've conducted your search in your different databases. You were able to upload your RIS file here into Covidence, and now I would say the fun can begin. And so you and your group mates will go through and you'll read the title, you'll read the abstract, and you'll make that decision. Yes, this should be included, or no, it shouldn't. You can select maybe, but you can only select maybe in this title and abstract screening phase. Maybe just means that you and your group mates will need to sit down after the fact to make that decision if a study should be included in the next phase of review or not. So let's just kind of pretend here. Let's say that I'm going to kick out, I don't really care about this study. No, I do care about this one. No, change of mind. No, thanks. Systematic review. I'm not going to include systematic reviews in my study, in my review, so I'm going to say no to that as well. This one, randomized control trial. Yes, that sounds great. This one, another randomized control trial. Sure. This one, fall prevention primary care. That seems a little vague. We're just going to say no. And you would keep going through all those, in this case, 48 different studies. Now, if I go back to my review, it tells me that I have 6 studies that have been screened, and I know that I wanted 2 of those studies to be pushed into this full text review. But right now, Covidence is telling me I have 0 studies still to screen in this full text review, meaning nothing's been pushed to full text review, and that is because I am a single individual here who is screening these titles and abstracts, and again, we need 2 individuals to agree that studies need to move on to that full text review in order for the studies to appear in this full text review spot. What is also nice about Covidence is that right here in our Prisma option, it will keep track for us of how many studies have been entered into our Covidence review, how many have been kicked out, of course, and then as you progress through your different screening phases, title and abstract, and then full text, it will keep track of how many studies get screened for title and abstract, how many get screened for full text, and ultimately leave you with a number of how many total studies are included in your final review. I anticipate, I've used Covidence quite a bit, and I feel fairly confident with it. So I anticipate there might be several questions when it comes to figuring out some of the tips and tricks of Covidence itself. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to problem solve through those issues with you. And also, if you come across something that you find really enhances your ability to use Covidence or your citation manager, please feel free to share that with me. I'm always looking for ways to make the review process more efficient. Good luck.